Good morning. It is 9:30. We get started promptly. Oh, maybe one more person. Yeah. All right, so we're here for round 2 of John Donne. We're in the mid part of his kind of biography, and the biography will be a little, maybe a little bit shorter today, we'll see. But we've left off with John Donne as a young man. If you recall, one of the things that we were really kind of starting to look at with John Donne was his love poetry, and specifically his a little bit more young man, testosterone-drenched love poetry that he's writing for, not necessarily for women, but mostly about them, and delivering at his inns of court. Now, he's been on the upward move, becoming a little bit more advanced in his profession. He's becoming more well-known in society. He takes a job in 1598 as secretary to Sir Thomas Egerton, the Lord Keeper of the Great Seal. He's probably become a Protestant by now, because remember he was raised Catholic, but he probably couldn't have gotten the job that he got in late 16th century England if he had not at least nominally converted to Anglicanism. So he's probably become at least a nominal Protestant, and he's working, he's moving up, and now he falls in love with Anne More. And this is a big turning point in Donne's life. He falls in love with, as I said last time, not exactly his boss's daughter, but his boss's wife's niece, who is still kind of out of his league socially. But over the course of a couple of years, he woos her, he wins her over, and they get married secretly. He essentially elopes, runs off with her, gets married, and when this comes out, he immediately is fired and imprisoned.
Why?
Because her dad's powerful enough to do it. So he is thrown into Fleet prison, along with his, oh Lord, it slipped my mind, if it's his brother yeah, it's his brother. His brother stood in for Anne's father to give the bride away. And the priest who married them also gets thrown in prison. It was not, the marriage to Anne was not well received by the family, as you can see. And they basically, Dad has the marriage inspected, basically. Is this legal? Like, is this a real marriage? And it turns out, yeah, it is. It's a priest, and it was all, it wasn't exactly above board, but it was all legal. And in fact, his daughter's married to John Donne, whether he likes it or not. And so they get out of prison, because you can't keep them in prison if they didn't actually do anything illegal. But they are completely disowned by the wealthy Moore family. And they are essentially broke for years. Anne's dowry, which would have been substantial, is withheld. Of course, John Donne is out of a job, and he can't get another one because of the scandal of him marrying this young woman. So, for a while, they essentially couch surf and stay with friends until finally Anne's cousin puts them up for a while in a little house in Surrey, which Donne has issues with. It's not that he's not grateful, because he is, and he makes a point of being grateful, but also in his private writings, he describes it as his prison. He's miserable, heartbroken that he has essentially done this to her and caused her to be disowned by her family, and she used to live this wealthy lifestyle, and now she's dirt poor, and that, of course, doesn't stop their whole married life. She has a baby basically every year, and eventually she'll have 12 children. 12 children in their marriage. They'll have 12 children, all singles, by the way, no multiples, just 12 pregnancies, 12 births. Two of them beg pardon?
And no money.
And no money, right. Which keeps them in no money for a while. But they are, two of them, just to lump the children all together, two of them are stillborn. Three of them died before the age of 10. So there's a lot of, as we talked about first thing, John Donne has a lot of death in his life. And children dying at this point is still not that uncommon. It doesn't make it any better, but most people have that experience in their families at some point with children not making it to adulthood. But that said, lots of kids, which he loves. He loves his children. He writes about them fairly often. He describes in one of his sad letters from Surrey. He says, I'm here with my beloved wife and 3 gamesome children playing nearby, and he says, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. He's like, but I'm deeply depressed. I still can't get a job, and my wife has given up everything to be with me. He's like, so I have to offer her everything I can, my company, my conversation, my love, everything I need to do to be with her to make up for this. So eventually, in the following year or so, Donne gets elected, which seems weird, but he gets elected as a member of parliament. Unfortunately, that's not a paid position. So even though he's an MP, he is still broke. And this goes on a little bit further. They finally need to move to a larger house. He begins work as a lawyer, but he's also writing works on theology and canon law and a lot of poetry that, of course, is not published because you don't publish poetry. You circulate it in manuscript among your friends. But he's writing a ton. He eventually manages to do a little bit of traveling. He goes to France, maybe Italy. We have another baby. Things go on. In 1607, now remember, he married Anne in 1601. 6 years later, his friends, they're still scraping together money. His friends are begging him to take holy orders. Join the church. You have a chance if you will actually get into the clergy. Donne is resistant to this idea. He doesn't want to join the clergy. He's only nominally an Anglican. He's really basically kind of Catholic at heart. And he became an Anglican kinda for work. And I want us to kind of grasp that. This is something we don't usually have to do very much. But changing your faith for a job, because you won't get a job any other way. That's wild, man. Would you do it? Would you renounce your faith and join another church of a different denomination? I know we sometimes don't think of Catholic and Anglican as that different, but for John Donne in the 16th century, it was very different. But would you do it? Would you renounce your faith and join another church because otherwise you're going to stay broke for the rest of your life? Even if you would be willing to do it, and John Donne did it, I'm not being derogatory necessarily about it, but that's got to pose some real crisis material. If you take your faith seriously, that's got to be a crisis for you. To think about changing, putting the fate of your eternal soul on the line for your temporal life. But Donne has done this, and now they're like, join the clergy. He said, well, wait a minute here. Hang on. I've already joined your church. Isn't that enough? Well, no. Apparently it is not. 1609. Donne still hasn't joined the clergy. But in 1609, it's been almost 10 years since the marriage. Anne's father finally relents and gives the dowry that Anne was owed, essentially. And this changes their game a little bit. Now their financial situation is much improved, because we're not just talking about a couple $100. The Moore family is well off. So now suddenly they have some money. This is good. Donne publishes, he's leaning more toward the Anglican Church. He publishes some works that lead him toward even more toward the Anglican Church. King James is now on the throne, by the way. He's been on the throne for a little while. This is James I of England, James VI of Scotland, same guy. This is also the James of the King James Version of the Bible. So James takes notice of Donne, because Donne is still running in fairly high circles. And Donne's support of the Anglican Church is looked upon favorably by the king. This is how he basically comes to the notice of the king. Partly, I mean, maybe a little bit because of the scandal of his marriage, but on the other hand, this guy, this eloquent, highly educated member of parliament, is writing in support of kind of trying to unify the people of England and bring them all under kind of the Anglican heading. So, great. This gets James's attention. Now, after a few years, in 1615, we'll skip ahead a little bit, Donne has really risen in King James's estimation. The king likes him. But he has made very clear that the only way he's going to give Donne any preferment is if he joins the clergy. He wants him in the church. He wants him as a preacher. And Donne has resisted for several years. No, I don't think so. No, I just can't. That's not me. That's not who I am. And finally, in 1615, he gives in. Donne relents and takes holy orders. He's ordained as a deacon and a priest at St. Paul's. He's appointed royal chaplain by King James, and shortly thereafter, King James suggests to Cambridge University that they confer a degree upon him. And so Cambridge gets voluntold, as my kids say. They get voluntold to give John Donne a doctorate of divinity. And so they grudgingly do it. But now yes, the king suggests that Donne is ready for that, so they say, all right, I guess so, fine. And so they confer a doctor of divinity on John Donne. And so now he is Dr. Donne. And he gets installed the following year as Reader of Divinity at Lincoln's Inn, which is fun because it's the same place that he was in law school, essentially. This is a little amusing because as now, instead of as Randy Jack Dunn, one of the law students, he is now the sober moralist who has come back. And he has the benefit that all good teachers would have in that circumstance of knowing firsthand what your students are getting up to from your own personal experience in the past. So he delivers his first sermon is the following year, 1617. Things are going great. And his 12th child is born, stillborn. And a few months later, his wife dies of complications from childbirth. And he is utterly devastated. Anne was everything to Donne. He is totally heartbroken, and he vows never to remarry, which is an odd choice at this time. You generally remarried, even when you're a woman. If you were a woman, it was almost a necessity. But most men remarried as well, and Donne said absolutely not. And he never does. He never remarries. He lives about another 12 years, 13 years or so, but he never does remarry, and he turns his entire attention to the things of God at that point. So, that is where I kind of want to pause on the bio, and let's talk about his poetry for Anne, because that was a conversation that we were having last time about the difference between his love poetry at the Inns of Court and his love poetry for his wife. And one of the things that I mentioned last time was that his poetry for his wife tends to be more tender in some ways and also sadder. Anne was not always particularly healthy, and she was constantly pregnant or nursing. She spent her entire married life pregnant or nursing. Occasionally delivering 2 babies in 1 year, one at the beginning of the year, one at the end of the year. So just constant situation here. So let's look at that. It was so hard, by the way, to choose for a front and back page for the poems for this, because he wrote a lot for Anne. And even last night I was looking back over his works and going, oh, I wish I'd put this in there. Oh, I wish I'd put this one in here. So we'll see what we have time for. But the first one is simply song, which is not so much a named title as sort of just sonnet, kind of a generic title. But let's look at what John Donne has to say here. John Donne travels a lot, and so he's often leaving. So we have a lot of leaving poems from him of like, don't be sad, I'm going away, but I'll be back. And this is what we're getting. So song, sweetest love, I do not go for weariness of thee. I'm not leaving because I'm tired of you. Far from it. Nor in hope the world can show a fitter love for me. I'm not looking for anybody else. But since that I must die at last, 'tis best to use myself in jest, and thus by feigned deaths to die. Eventually they will be separated. Of course, he assumes that he'll be the one to go first. But he says, since I must die at last, eventually we are going to have to be separated. 'Tis best to use myself in jest, essentially to practice being away from you, so that and likewise for you to be away from me. So that's by feigned deaths to die. So this is just rehearsal. Yesternight the sun went hence, and yet is here today. We're giving an example, right? Some things leave, but they do come back, right? Yesternight the sun went hence, and yet is here today. He hath no desire, nor sense, nor half so short away. The sun goes much further away, right, than Donne is actually going to go. The sun makes, of course, in his poetical concept, a circuit of the earth. By the way, Donne doesn't really think the earth's at the center of anything. He's being metaphorical here. Yesternight the sun went hence, and yet is here today. He hath no desire, nor sense, nor half so short away. He's not going nearly as far away as the sun is. Then fear not me, but believe that I shall make speedier journeys, since I take more wings and spurs than he. I have a lot more interest in getting back, and I'm not going nearly so far away. I'm going to move much faster than the sun would in order to get back to you. Oh, how feeble is man's power, that if good fortune fall, cannot add another hour, nor a lost hour recall. People don't have any real power. This comes right out of the Bible. You can't by anything make your hair change a single color. You can't. You have no power at anything. Even with good luck. If you're enjoying yourself, if you're having a good time, you can't add another hour to it. You can't bring back good times from the past. You're stuck where you are. But come bad chance, and we join to it our strength, and we teach it art and length itself for us to advance. Good times are short. They seem short anyway. They're really no different than bad times. The clock ticks at the same rate no matter what. But in good times, we can't seem to stretch it out or call it back. But in bad times, what do? We join to it our strength. And we teach it art and length itself for us to advance. What is it that we do in bad times? We can't seem to extend good times, but with bad times, what does he mean we join to it our strength and we teach it art and length?
How we react to it, does it make us more resilient?
Yeah, maybe so. We do seem to drag those things out though, don't we? When we wallow a little bit. We have our self-pity and we wallow. We add to those bad times our strength. We teach them art. We just kind of savor sometimes that grief or that melancholy or that missing someone, and we just wallow. It seems stronger and longer than they actually are. So think about this in context of the poem. Donne's saying, I have to leave, but I'll be back. It'll be okay. And he says, remember, in good times, we can't extend that. Like, time flies when you're having fun, right? But in bad times, we we wallow. And it seems longer than it even is. He's like, when I'm away, don't wallow. Don't make it seem longer than it is. Don't add to it your strength and teach it art and length itself or us to advance. Just keep going, basically. When thou sighest not wind, but sighest my soul away. When thou weepst unkindly kind, my life's blood doth decay. Somebody paraphrase that for me. When thou sighest not wind, but sighest my soul away. When thou weepst unkindly kind, my life's blood doth decay. Give me a paraphrase. What's he saying here?
I feel bad when you feel bad.
Yes, exactly. I feel bad when you feel bad. When you grieve and sigh and weep and break in my heart, I was like, I have to leave, Don't make me feel worse about this. He says it cannot be. Look at it. I love this, by the way. Unkindly kind, right? He loves that she misses him, but it hurts at the same time. He says, it cannot be that thou lovest me as thou sayest, if in thine my life thou waste, that art the best of me. If you really loved me, and he's being a little bit playful here, but he says, if you really loved me, you wouldn't hurt me with your tears and your sighs. It cannot be that thou lovest me as thou sayest, if in thine my life thou waste, that art the best of me. You are my better half, right? Why are you hurting me with your tears?
He's asking for support.
Yes.
isn't
Yeah,
he? He's saying, support me in who I am and what I'm doing.
exactly.
Reassured.
Yeah. Good. Let not thy divining heart forethink me any ill. What is divining? What does he mean by that?
Missing is kind of it's an ache from missing.
Not exactly. What is divination? I know you know it. Spit it out.
Oh, you know.
Foretelling
Yes.
or seeking possible knowledge that is unknown.
Yeah. Essentially, yeah, like he says, forethink, right? Let not thy divining heart, like you think you know what's going to happen. Let not thy divining heart forethink me any ill. Don't assume that something bad's going to happen to me while I'm gone. Destiny may take thy part. You may speak your fears into existence if you're not careful. Destiny may take thy part and may thy fears fulfill. But think that we are but turned aside to sleep. They who one another keep alive, ne'er parted be. But think that we are but turned aside to sleep. Just imagine that we're still in bed together and we've just rolled over and we're turned aside from one another. We may be lying back to back, right? But we're just turned aside to sleep. That's it. You can't see me, and we're sleeping, but we're right there, but you can't see me. That's okay. They who one another keep alive, ne'er parted be. I live for you, you live for me, and we can't ever be apart in that way. See how different this feels from last week's busy old fool, unruly son, right? Thoughts on, and that's the end of that poem. Thoughts on song. I cannot keep this mouse from making weird pop-ups.
It's different from the flea.
Yes. Quite different, right? We're not trying to have seduction by means of insect.
I guess, before he was writing, not married,
Mhm.
not in love, in thought. And now it's all shifted.
Yes.
And now I have this love with a lot of baggage in the
Mhm.
beginning.
Yeah.
But he writes totally different.
does.
Yeah.
Love poetry is not all created equal. Let's look at this next one, a fever. As I mentioned, Anne was often unwell, and so this is kind of a cathartic piece from John Donne when she is ill at one time. Because, oh, do not die. Let's start there, right? There's a real concern for this, right? Oh, do not die, for I shall hate all women so when thou art gone, that thee I shall not celebrate when I remember thou wast one. If she dies of this illness, he's like, I will hate all women on behalf of you dying and leaving me alone. That thee I shall not celebrate when I remember thou wast one. This will break my heart for women so much that I won't even be able to celebrate your life because I'll remember you were a woman and I hate all those guys. So intense, right? Oh, do not die, for I shall hate all women so when thou art gone, that thee I shall not celebrate when I remember thou wast one. But yet thou canst not die, I know. To leave this world behind is death. But when thou from this world wilt go, the whole world vapors with thy breath. That's good stuff, man. But you can't die. And I know you can't, right? Thou canst not die, I know. To leave this world behind is death. So we're defining it, right? It's like, so you can't die because that's what death means, to leave this world behind. That means you go somewhere else, right? Your soul leaves and goes elsewhere. But when thou from this world wilt go, the whole world vapors with thy breath. You can't leave the world behind because you are the whole world. The world will just evaporate if you die.
I said, he's got to die.
Yes, yeah. He says you can't possibly die because to die means you separate yourself from the world, but you are the world, so you can't separate yourself from the world. The world just goes away if you were to die. Or, let's take a different conceit here. Or, if, when thou, the world's soul, goest, it stay, 'tis but thy carcass then, the fairest woman but thy ghost, but corrupt worms, the worthiest men. It's like, okay, so maybe the whole world itself, like the actual physical globe, won't just disintegrate when you die, but you're the soul anyway. So if the soul leaves, what do we have left? We've got a carcass, we've got ghosts, and we've got worms, essentially. That is what you have left. So maybe it would be better if the whole world just evaporated and all we've got a corpse and a ghost and some worms. But nothing is any good, basically, if she should die. It's essentially the end of the world if Anne succumbs to this fever. Let's look at the stanza. I kind of wish I had broken these into better stanzas. Oh, wrangling schools of thought, not like literal schools. Oh, wrangling schools that search what fire shall burn this world. Had none the wit unto this knowledge to aspire, that this, her fever, might be it? Schools of thought debating, how will the world end, right? How does Armageddon happen? He says, had none of them the wit unto this knowledge to aspire? Did they not suspect that maybe the death of Anne Moore, and Donne in this case, the death of Anne might be it? This is the fever, right? The fire that burns up the world. And yet she cannot waste by this, nor long bear this torturing wrong. For more corruption needful is to fuel such a fever long. She cannot waste by this. She can't slowly decay away from this illness, nor bear this torturing wrong, nor bear this torturing wrong, for more corruption needful is to fuel such a fever long. She's too pure. She's too perfect. She's too pure. You have to have more bad stuff in you to fuel a long wasting illness, Donne says. It's not going to work. She'll probably, if she's going to die very quickly, because she doesn't have the corruption in her body to sustain this. These burning fits, but meteors be, whose matter in thee is soon spent. Thy beauty in all parts which are thee are unchangeable firmament. She's like the heavens, right? These burning fits, these feverish agues, are just brief. They're little flashes because they burn up in her perfection here. Yet 'twas of my mind, seizing thee, though in it thee cannot persever. Which is how you would pronounce that, persever. For I had rather own or be of thee 1 hour than all else ever. No matter what happens, he doesn't regret being with her. I had rather own or be of thee 1 hour than everything else. This is a little bit of an echo that we get back from the sun rising, even from the canonization as well, the idea that she is absolutely everything. And she exceeds the world. She exceeds all else, right? Everything that he has is right here. We're moving a little bit fast through these couple of poems because I kind of want to get to the other ones. But thoughts on fever?
There's so much depth. I mean, so much thought. It's hard to imagine. Well, it's that love is so all-encompassing.
And consuming.
Consuming.
His life, yeah.
Yes, and to, I guess, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Question.
Yes.
Like, both the first two.
Mhm.
Does he give these to her? I mean, are they
Likely.
just... Huh?
Likely, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Or, does he's just in his mode at that time? I just wonder, that'd be pretty cool if somebody gave me that.
Right? I
Well,
know.
I
I know.
Like, oh Lord, I'll not do anything. I can't wait till you get home.
Right? I mean, so, yes, he probably does. He probably does.
Okay.
Now, something like The Flea or something
Yeah.
like that, probably not. He's mostly, in stuff like that, he's mostly showing off for his buddies. This, we don't have, this we don't have absolute evidence, the Anne didn't write a commentary on it, or anything. But yeah, almost surely this would have been offered to her as something to hang on to while he's gone, or something to tell her, how much he loves her, how much he feels about her sickness, and she should get better because otherwise the world's gonna end. So that would be motivation, wouldn't it, to get better? I think the world's gonna end. But yeah, Donne is as a metaphysical poet, you have to think your way through Donne. Donne takes work, and unlike some other poets, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not good poets. They tend to be fairly straightforward. There's imagery that's familiar. We read about the skies and the stars and flowers and all that stuff, and we go, oh, it's a love poem. Sure, yeah, absolutely. And then you get stuff like Armageddon and Fleas and India, the India of Spice and Wine, and you're like, is this a love poem? And then you get into it and you're like, wow, yes it is. Boy, is it. But Donne does make you work for it a little bit. I just think the work is worthwhile.
When did they evidently separated? When did they separate?
Oh, Donne travels a lot.
Oh, just that.
Was this, my question is, was this in the beginning, or was this at the end of 10 years? 10 children, or 12 children, what it was?
We don't know exactly when almost any of Donne's poems were written. Because they didn't publish them except as like a group later. There's actually a lot of arguments about how to arrange Donne's poetry in collections. Like in this collection, my well-used one, the poems are seeming, I mean, they had to arrange them somehow, but they seem almost random. So we don't have a good sequence. There's been scads of arguments about the sequencing of his holy sonnets, especially, for example, but yeah, we don't know. So at what point does he write this? He's married to her, so sometime between 1601 and 1617?
Well, this to me is like a lesson in life. He's expressing. If you think about it, and this is my perspective as a man.
Sure.
Generally when you're young, sex is a big part of your love for that person. Okay. And obviously, with them having a child every year, that become almost like an obsession. That's my opinion. Okay.
Okay, sure.
But then when they separated, it seems to me, began to travel. He saw the love much bigger than that, and he, in fact, grew. And he's trying to explain to her that at her weakest moment, how much she means to him. And even though she's not giving him children and that desire that he once had, he still has that love. And I believe that is eternal. That's part of life. He's living the part of life that we all live.
Well said. Yeah, I think that's excellent.
For what it's worth, that's
And
my
I think
perspective.
that's worth a lot, especially with John Donne. Yeah, we see exactly that. That's a really astute observation.
Thank you.
Because what we see in his early poetry is that, like I've said, testosterone-drenched young men's poetry, which is about sex for the most part. Lust. And with Anne, yeah, there's definitely sex. They've had 12 kids. But yeah, we see that expansion, that depth, that doesn't require sex to be in love, right? The love is greater, it's deeper.
And that's a cycle of love with any love.
Yeah.
Okay? And, when a man is young, it's hard to separate love from sex. I mean, I'm being honest about it, and that's a
We're all
fact.
adults here.
But anyway, as you mature, as you grow, then that becomes less. But it still is an important part.
Sure.
But it is not like the part that you have to question is that you're looking for. You're longing for the heart, not the body.
Yes.
Yes.
What a beautiful segue into our next poem. Perfect. Thank you. Because next, we have my favorite one of Donne's love poems. Hands down, this is my favorite. And it's probably his most famous. It's a little bit, I don't know, there's a tendency, I think, with movies and books and poetry and everything else to say, oh, I like this obscure one. No. The famous ones are famous for a reason. My favorite Shakespeare play is Hamlet. Big surprise, right? The big one, because it's the best one. So, a valediction forbidding mourning. So let's just start with the title. A valediction. What is a valediction? A goodbye. Vale, right, is goodbye, and dictus, right, is speaking, a goodbye speaking, farewell. It's literally a saying of farewell. Forbidding mourning. This is goodbye, but don't be sad. So once again, this is a travel poem, right? Donne is leaving, he's going away on a trip. And and I know a little bit more about exactly what this poem was about. Anne is particularly afraid because at one point when he left, she got sick. And was not sure if she was going to survive until he returned. So she really didn't want him to leave again, and she pressured him not to go. He's like, I have to go. So he writes her this to try to soothe her and to reassure her that everything's going to be fine. So it's like song, except it's better. So And this is nicely broken into stanzas, and our friend here has given us a beautiful segue into exactly what's going on in this poem. So let's begin. Let's start with death. Because it's John Donne. We always start with death. As virtuous men pass mildly away and whisper to their souls to go, while some of their sad friends do say, the breath goes now, and some say, no. We're looking initially right here at a deathbed scene. This is Donne's favorite scene to talk about in all of his poetry. It's always about beds. It's either sex bed or deathbed. Like, those are the two things that Donne does. We're looking at the death specifically of what kind of man?
I love
Yeah, but he tells you, virtuous man, right? So a good man. How do good men die? As virtuous men pass mildly away and whisper to their souls to go. The idea of a good man's death, they're not dying screaming in terror, right? Their life has expended, they are peaceful, their death is mild. They whisper, okay, I can go now. They whisper to their souls to go, while some of their sad friends do say, the breath goes now, like he's dying now. And then others like, no, he's still alive. The transition from life to death is so gentle and so comfortable that it's hard to even tell when it happens. Their friends watching over them are not even sure when it takes place. So he gives you the setup, right? So we have a simile coming in. As virtuous men pass mildly away and whisper to their souls to go, while some of their sad friends do say, the breath goes now, and some say no. So, just like that, so let us melt and make no noise, no tear floods, nor sigh tempests move. 'Twere profanation of our joys to tell the laity our love. As the soul from a good man gently separates from his body in death, let us separate like that. So let us melt and make no noise, no tear floods, right? No weeping floods of tears or sighing up a tempest of a storm. 'Twere profanation of our joys. What does it mean to profane something? Yeah, make it ugly, make it common. Literally, it means to make common for just everybody. So, 'twere profanation of our joys. The delights that we have in our love will be made common and ugly to tell the laity. This is almost coming back to a canonization idea here, right? He says we are the clergy of love. And what we have for ourselves is private, it's holy. And if we make a big to-do about it and publicize how we're feeling and everything, it's going to profane it. We're going to take that holiness and drag it through the mud, essentially. So when we separate, we do it quietly, peacefully, like the soul of a good man leaving him in death. Moving of the earth, which is literal, he's literally talking about earthquakes, okay? Moving of the earth brings harms and fears. Seems like a reasonable response to an earthquake. Men reckon what it did meant. Earthquakes and other natural disasters would have been, and sometimes still are, seen as omens or portents or signs and wonders in some case. Moving of the earth brings harms and fears. Men reckon what it did and meant. But trepidation of the spheres, though greater far, is innocent. He's bringing in and kind of an Aristotelian cosmology here. He's calling back something that lasted up through the Middle Ages. Anyone familiar with the concept of the spheres in cosmology? Just checking. No, not really. A little bit. Okay, so this comes out of ancient Greece and gets toyed with for centuries. The idea that around a geocentric universe with Earth at the center, the planets and the stars and everything would have been. The idea of bodies floating in a void was incomprehensible, really, for quite some time. It's still a little bit hard to wrap your brain around. But the idea was that the Earth was at the center and there were concentric crystalline spheres, enormous, right, that had the planets and the stars and stuff embedded in them. If you can think of like a Christmas, like a glass Christmas ornament with like glitter on it or sand or something like that, that was embedded in that. And these spheres would turn and circle around one another in like concentric, like a nesting doll. And they were crystalline, so you could see through them, and you could just see the stuff embedded in them. This idea of the movement of the spheres, moving of the earth, he says, sorry, went up here, you can't see that. Moving of the earth brings harms and fears. When the earth trembles, it freaks people out, understandably. Men reckon what it did and meant, but trepidation of the spheres, when the spheres, these great imaginary crystalline spheres move, though greater far, because they're way bigger than the earth, but they don't cause any harm, right? The earth quakes and people get scared and start wondering what it means. But the spheres move and nobody's concerned. The greater far is innocent. So we've got this cosmology thing going on here. Lovely conceit. What's this got to do with love? Dull, sublunary lovers. There's another one of those great words. Sublunar. What does this literally mean? Sublunar.
Under the heavens.
Under the
Under the moon.
moon, right. So what's under the moon? The earth, right, essentially. So dull, sublunary, earthly lovers, love, whose soul is sense. This is kind of a big thing in the poem. It's nicely parenthetically marked for us. He says, whose soul is sense. This comes back to what our friend here, I'm sorry, sir, what's your name?
Charles.
Charles. What Charles was telling us so wisely about soul and sense. Whose soul? What is your soul? It's who you are, right? That's your spiritual part, right? This is who you truly are. Your body is not who you truly are. Your soul is who you truly are. But in this case, he says earthly lovers, not like them. Earthly lovers, whose soul, who they truly are, is sense. The senses, who are nothing but bodies. The only thing that they have is their physicality. He calls them dull, sublunary lovers, love, whose soul is sense, cannot admit absence, because it doth remove those things which elemented it. If all you've got is physical chemistry, can you be separated and keep your love? Can you have a long-distance relationship if all you've got is sex? No. That love will go away real fast. It's not love, right? If all you've got is your physical relationship, separating ends it. You can't maintain that. This is one of the reasons I think that often, as you said, young people don't do long-distance relationships very well. Because most of it is bound up in their physicality, in their chemistry, in the sex. He says, dull sublunary lovers love, whose soul is sense, cannot admit absence, because it doth remove those things which elemented it. What sparked the love? The physicality, the sense of everything. And when you remove that, there's nothing left. But we, not like those dull sublunary lovers, us heavenly lovers, the clergy of love, but we, by a love so much refined that ourselves know not what it is, enter assured of the mind, care less eyes, lips, and hands to this. It says we have a different love. Our love is deeper than that. We are enter assured of the mind. We have a mental, spiritual, emotional connection. And if we have to be away from eyes, lips, hands, okay, it's no big deal. Our two souls, therefore, which are one, those two make one, right? Our two souls, therefore, which are one, though I must go, endure not yet a breach, but an expansion, like gold to airy thinness feet. We have this malleable metal, right? It's like, so you have to be here and I have to be here, but it's not like a break and we're separate. It's more like we're one sheet of gold. Our souls are like one sheet of gold that you can hammer and stretch until it's like this airy thinness, right, into a fiber. But we're still connected, even though we're very far away, because our two souls are one.
You would
If-
have never
if-
discovered that had it not been for the separation.
Yeah.
You would have never known that.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know why he traveled so much, what he was doing?
Was he
He always he
speaking?
had patrons. He was working for people who were supporting him, and they told him, okay, we're going to Germany. Okay, basically for business is what he needed to travel for. Business, politics.
Was it law? Was it?
Sometimes, yeah. He was not exclusively a lawyer, and in fact, later as he becomes part of the church, he still has noble patrons. So yeah, he goes with them, mostly as part of an entourage, basically for someone higher up in the chain than he is. So it's like, our souls are actually one, not two. But let's say they are two. If they be two, they are two, so as stiff twin compasses are two. This is one of the most famous conceits from John Donne. He's like, okay, two lover souls are like a geometric compass, like the thing you use to draw circles with. That's the compass he's talking about. Not like a directional compass, but something for math. I love John Donne. If they be two, they are two, so as stiff twin compasses are two, right? Two legs of the compass. Thy soul, the fixed foot, because she's not going anywhere, makes no show to move, but doth if the other do, right? So when you expand a compass, right, keep reading. And though it in the center sit, right, because she's the fixed foot, though it in the center sit, yet when the other far doth roam, it leans and hearkens after it. If you can imagine using a compass to draw a circle, when the one foot goes out from it, the foot in the center leans toward it. Yet when the other far doth roam, it leans and hearkens after it and grows erect as that comes home. So we've definitely have phallic imagery here, and even though it's inverted, it still kind of works. Such wilt thou be to me, like that fixed foot that roots me to a place, who must, like the other foot, obliquely run. Thy firmness, her steadfastness, makes my circle just, and makes me end where I begun. And I'll be back, right? You can get cosmology and math, all kinds of stuff in one of the best love poems ever written.
Who would have ever thought a compass?
Right?
I'm thinking that. Who would have ever?
I know, it's so good though.
That was the question I was going to ask.
Yes,
Of course, we're obviously foreign
sure.
to, in this time,
Mhm.
the language, the words.
Mhm.
Would they, at that time, understand all of it? The metaphors, the analogies?
Some stuff would be more familiar, like the
Okay.
trepidation of the spheres would make more sense. We don't talk about that
Now,
anymore with modern astrophysics and stuff like that. As a side note, by the way, John Donne's life and Johannes Kepler's life are almost exactly the same. They're born within 1 year of each other and they die within 1 year of each other, which just the cosmology always makes me think of them. Like, oh yeah, you know, Kepler's.
This discovery, all this discovery.
Mhm.
at the time.
Yes.
How long did he live?
yeah.
Donne and Kepler, about 1570 to 1630-ish. Yeah. But yeah, I actually looked that up. I was like, I don't know why I was looking up Kepler, but I noticed, like, oh, look at that.
How old was she when she passed?
Donne married Anne when she was 17, I think, 17 or 18. And she dies, so she would have been born, so he's a little older than her, so he marries her in 1601. She was about 17 years old. You can arithmetic this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think that.
And then she dies in 1617. So,
About 35.
Pretty
yeah.
young.
yeah. But
She did a lot of work.
she did a lot of work. A lot of work.
Birthing, a lot of birthing.
Yes, hardest work ever.
They call it labor.
Yeah, for a reason.
Well, and then Carrie.
Mhm. So again, this is like my favorite love poem, at least of John Donne's. Other questions or comments on this? It's just so typical Donne, right? The conceits are so odd, and yet somehow they work. You wouldn't think you could be emotionally attached to a geometric compass, but somehow you can be.
The stretch is good.
Yeah.
I think the world is so different,
Yes.
so that this is an insight into that world.
To finish answering your question, because I only answered about half of it.
It's okay.
Some of Donne's a highly educated man, and he's writing for his highly educated friends. That doesn't mean necessarily that, you know, a semi-literate peasant would be able to just read Donne's poetry easily. But some concepts would be more familiar than necessarily the language.
Mhm.
All right, we only have like 5 minutes, and I want to look at his holy sonnet that he wrote when she died. This is not his first holy sonnet. He writes, he starts writing them well before she has died, but this is the one for her death. Since she whom I loved hath paid her last debt to nature, and to hers, and my good is dead, and her soul early into heaven ravished, holy and heavenly things my mind is set. It's like once she has died, all of my good has ended. Holy and heavenly things my mind is set. I'm not thinking about love, I'm not thinking about women, none of that. It's all about God now. Hear the admiring her, my mind did wet to seek thee, God. So streams do show the head. But though I have found thee, and thou my thirst hast fed, a holy thirsty dropsy, that's kind of a feverish condition, melts me yet. It's like, hear the admiring her, my mind did wet to seek thee, God. She was my path to you, in a sense. By admiring her, that encouraged me to seek after God. So streams do show the head, right, the fount. She's the stream, God is the fountain of that. So streams do show the head. But though I have found thee, and thou my thirst hast fed, he's grateful to God. He's found God, right, and he's being fed by God. It's like a holy thirsty dropsy melts me yet. I'm still feverish. I still feel ill. I still feel this desire. But why should I beg more love? When as thou dost woo my soul for hers, offering all thine, why should I want more? You've given me your love in exchange for the loss of hers. And dost not only fear, lest I allow my love to saints and angels, things divine, but in thy tender jealousy dost doubt lest the world, flesh, yea, devil, put thee out. The only thing that he has a concern about is that he won't be able to be steadfast in his love for God. And this is going to be a perpetual issue for Donne. As we move into his, and this is the good kind of looking forward. I know we went kind of briskly through this, but what I want you to get primarily out of this sonnet is that he sees Anne as his way to God, but it's not all perfect as a result. As we look ahead next week into his holy sonnets, there is going to be a lot of anxiety of really not being 100% sure that he's loving God like he's supposed to, that God and he are okay, which kind of makes sense if we think about why he joined the Church of England. It wasn't out of any great religious, conversion or anything. It's for his work. So we get to see Donne really kind of writhe in agony next week over his salvation and his relationship with God and the church. But we'll have to do that next week. Hope you enjoyed your second week of Donne, and I hope you'll come back next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.